Chat, 1 2 1 2.
Good evening, greenhorns, and welcome to the Road to Wrestling School presents the Grizzly Files. That's right, greenhorns. This is the first episode of a new mini-show within our show called the Grizzly Files. I'm still on my way to the Superior Professional Wrestling Training Center House of Pain in beautiful downtown Hagerstown, Maryland. So technically, yes, I'm still on the road to wrestling school, but I'm doing it without the aid of hashtag Hamish Stewart. Because that jabroni is on vacation because he gets loads of vacation. How nice for him. Disabled car, excuse me, because as you can hear, I am still driving. So the Grizzly Files. These are the solo shows of one Grizzly Joe Grasso. That's me, greenhorns. Grizzly Joe Grasso. Now, I know what you're saying, greenhorns. You're like, but Grizzly, you've already done a bunch of solo shows. Well, I'm going to tell you to go suck it. Because now they're going to be called the Grizzly Files. I've just made that up, and I'm pretty proud of it. So we're doing that. So, greenhorns, on this first episode of the Grizzly Files, this episode is called Acting 101. That's right, greenhorns. Welcome to school. I'm your teacher, and y'all going to be learning some acting. Now, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know that hashtag Hamish and I got our start in the theater. That's where we cut our teeth. That's why we're so good at what we do. Well, good at most of what we do. And we did that because we were trained theater artists. We are trained theater artists. Hashtag Hamish studied at University of Maryland, getting himself a theater degree. And I studied at Towson University, the nationally accredited theater program, thank you very much, and caught myself a degree in acting from there, which has served me fairly well, thank you very much. I've also done work with the Maryland Renaissance Festival. I've also done work with professional theater companies, including Chesapeake Shakespeare. I've done it with Faction of Fools in D.C. I've been a fight choreographer for operas. I've been a fight choreographer for big shows. And now, greenhorns, you get to take a lesson from me. Because, frankly, the number one thing I'm asked when people hear that I am a trained actor, wrestlers tend to ask me, well, can you give us any pointers? Can you give us any acting pointers? And that's a heavy question, you know. You can't just come up with a couple of quick things. I mean, you can, but it's more involved than that. So consider this your crash course in acting, greenhorns. You're going to learn how to strut your stuff in that ring with a little more panache, thanks to Grizzly. Now, I'm going to warn you right here at the top that this is going to come out loose and fast. I have no structure. I've written nothing down. So this might end up being a stream of consciousness of my acting experiences and lessons you can take to the bank. The bank being the stage, and the stage for you greenhorns being that wrestling ring and that promo camera. That's right. So, right at the top, let's get this out of the way. Professional wrestlers are entertainers. I know we've said that before, but I want to hammer that home. Professional wrestlers are entertainers. They are there to entertain. Now, what they do is athletic, but I would not call them athletes. The same way I would not call a dancer an athlete. What they do is extremely athletic, but they're not athletes. They are not competing. That's really the big difference there. Things get gray when you get into professional football and other professional sports, but I'm not touching that because that's not what this podcast is about. This podcast is about professional wrestling, and by God, they are entertainers. So if you are an entertainer, you have to look at the wrestling match as your performance. If you're looking at it as your performance, you should treat yourself as an entertainer, as an actor, as a performer. Now, if you're a performer, your body is your instrument. If you're a performer, you're an artist. An artist uses different tools to create their art. Your typical artist is going to use paints or pencils. A musician is going to use an instrument. A singer is going to use their voice. A wrestler uses their entire body, the same way a dancer uses their entire body. So your body is your instrument, and you have to tune your instrument. You have to take care of your instrument. Now, this is coming from someone who does not take care of their instrument. But all the more reason that I should be telling you this, because I should do it myself. You need to eat properly. You need to exercise. And that's a hard thing to do. I'm not saying give up all good tasting things and blah, blah, blah. I'm not getting into all that. Hashtag Hamish talks plenty about fitness, so I'm just going to reiterate, your body's your instrument, take care of it. But something I can tell you, if your body is your instrument, your entire body, the one thing that fuels your body besides water and food is air. Breathing, proper breathing. Good God, greenhorns, you know what it is to get blown up in that ring and to be sucking air, but to be able to control your breath, to be able to control your breathing, to know when to breathe. When you're blown up in the ring, you have to know when you need to stop and breathe properly. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Real, strong breathing. And you need to be able to catch quick breaths. The one thing you probably haven't thought about, or maybe you've realized, but you haven't really put it into words, audiences breathe with you. Theater, acting, is a mirror to life. And if it's a mirror to life, breath is life. When you breathe on stage, your audience breathes with you. I'm going to say that again because that's an important point. Your audience breathes with you. If you are sucking down air, the audience is too. If you are screaming, they're screaming too. If you are holding your breath, this is a big one. If you are holding your breath, the audience is too. Which means if you're not holding your breath on purpose, you are making that audience feel real anxious. Even in wrestling. This is true on stage, but it's really true in wrestling too. You have to breathe. Now, I know you're doing a physical activity, so your body's going to force you to breathe, but I've seen a lot of trainees come in, and they'll go into a move, and they think holding their breath makes the most sense, because they don't want to seem blown up. But that's okay. You're early in your training. It's okay to be blown up. So breathe, for God's sakes. When you breathe, you get more oxygen to your brain, which means you will think better, which means your body will perform better. So breathe. Do breathing exercises. Take your time. Do the very deep breaths. Count to 5. Inhale through your nose. Exhale a 5 count out through your mouth. This will calm you, and it will allow your lungs to fill more. That's number one. Before we get into any acting things, just work on your goddamn breath. And while we're talking about breath, your voice. Your other part of your instrument. Yeah, you got your body. You know how to do all your physical stuff. But your voice. People don't think about this. They go out in that crowd. They're screaming their heads off. And by the end of their match, their voice is completely hoarse and gone. Well, what if you have to wrestle again the next day, or even the next night, or even later that night? You got to take care of your voice. You need to not pinch your vocal cords. So if you're screaming and you're doing this with your voice, you're going to pay for that, brother. And that's going to suck for the next week, at least. You can blow out your voice really easily. So when look, we're all want to holler in the ring. We want to holler, we want to scream, we want to get the fans into us. You have to do it with an open throat. You have to not pinch your vocal cords and make that hoarse sound. You got to, and you have to support what you're doing. So when you breathe, when you take those deep breaths, you're going down to your diaphragm. That's a little muscle. It's not little, it's actually quite big. It's the muscle that controls your lungs, controls your breathing. It's called the diaphragm. When you breathe in deep, you breathe in through your stomach. You feel your stomach expand. That's your diaphragm. That's a deep breath. That's a good breath. That's a diaphragmatic breath. That will support anything you have to say that comes out of your mouth. That is the breath you want. So when you're in the ring and you're trying to scream, don't breathe in so your shoulders raise up. Breathe in so your stomach expands. And then you have power. You have power to project your voice. That's the other thing. You have a screaming crowd around you. You need to project your voice without screaming to hurt your voice. So you're going to take a deep breath in, you're going to expand your stomach muscle, and you're going to speak from that with an open throat. You will be, 1, louder. You will be, 2, clearer. Another point on clear in a moment. And you will be heard. It will have power behind it. You can tell the difference between someone who is hollering from their throat and someone who is hollering from their diaphragm. From projecting. That's the word I'm going to use. Projecting from your diaphragm. It's a really big difference. And it will help preserve your voice in the ring. All right. So those are your basics. As you know, you got your voice you're taking care of. You got your breath. You got your body. Now, on to more finer points of acting. What is the definition of acting? Acting is doing something on stage. doing something on stage. Now, with wrestling, it's all action. So this is a little easier for wrestlers to grasp. When people are learning scenes for the first time, they think it's all in their head. They need to act this inner acting where they have to feel these things. And no. Acting comes from your body. It comes from breath, and it comes from the way your body moves, especially in professional wrestling. What your body does is what you will feel. Think about the way you stand in the ring. Think about your stance. Think about before you lock up. Think about how you move in that ring. Think about the boots you're wearing. Think about your gimmick. We're going to get into character. Obviously, this is leading to character. But I'm talking about the fine points of finding this character. This is how I find character. I think of what boots I'm wearing. I think about how Grizzly Duncan McBain is going to move in that ring. I think how he's going to look at his opponent. I think how he's going to breathe. I think how he's going to move around. I think how he's going to fight. And it starts simply just like standing. Stand the way you want to stand. I mean, it's got to project something to the audience. It's got to project what you want to do, and it's got to project what you want. That's how I start finding a character. What does your character want? What does your gimmick want? What does Grizzly Duncan McBain want in that ring? Why is he there? Why is it important that he has to fight right now? Most of the time, you're going to know who your opponent is. Even as a character. You know, very few people are... you think about the kayfabeness of wrestling. If Grizzly Duncan McBain is going out to the ring, he already knows who his opponent is. He's seen the card. The card's been advertised. He knows who he's going to fight. Unless it's a storyline where they don't, you know who you're going to fight. That wrestling match, that's your scene. The other person in that ring, that's your scene partner. You're going to do a scene with them. You know what this is going to be. You know what you're coming out to do. You have to go out there knowing... Now I'm going to throw some terms at you. You got to know what your objective is. Now, obviously, everyone's objective. What I mean by objective, what's your goal? What's your purpose? Why are you there? Obviously, everyone's objective should be to win the match. But that's not... I mean, obviously, everyone wants to win the match. You got to put a little more flavor on that. Put a little interesting adjective and verb to it. Do you want to decimate your opponent? Do you want to conquer your opponent? Do you want to obliterate your opponent? These are more heel terms. Do you want to, I don't know, you got to think different verbs you can pin to that objective. So when you found your objective, why you want to win? You want to win to be the best. You want to win, you want to show, you want to avoid show. Show's a weird verb. But you want to project this strength. You'll find it. You don't have to be this exact. But you got to know why you're in that goddamn ring. You got to know where your guy came from, why he's there, why he's fighting in this match. Why are you in that fucking ring? Why do we as the audience need to care that you're in that ring? The next step, you got your adjective, you got your objective, you know what you want to do. Now you got to figure out how you're going to do it. This gets into your move set, your action. It's a lot easier for a wrestler to find these than it is for an actor when they're just starting out because you have moves that you're going to do. I mean, it's a fight. So you don't have to get super specific as an actor would when they're doing a scene. But you can. For example, working a body part. Well, by God, that's a logical action to get your objective. If I want to break this wrestler's back, if I want to break my opponent's back, which is a good adjective, how am I going to win this match? I'm going to break his back. How am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to do back breakers. I'm going to do a camel clutch. I'm going to do body slams. I'm going to weaken his back, and I'm going to snap it in half. Your moves are your actions. The same way that if I were doing a scene and my objective was to have someone fall in love with me, I want them to fall madly in love with me, my action might be kiss their hand. My action might be sit closer to them. My action might be woo them, speak poetry to them. In the wrestling ring, your maneuvers, your wrestling moves are your actions. Think about that as you're building your move set. What leads you to a logical progression? Bret Hart had a logical progression. When he was ready to win a match, he would do a specific set of moves, and that would lead him to winning a match, hopefully. He would have several that he would do in a row before he got to the sharpshooter. But working a body part, that's an idea of being specific and following your action. Now, Professional wrestling is it's a heightened form of acting. The same way that Shakespeare is, the same way that clowning is. Your reactions are bigger than they would be otherwise. You're selling a move. You got to find those levels of selling a move. You got to find out how much does this hurt, why does it hurt, specifically where does it hurt. Now, you don't have to indicate where it hurts exactly. I mean, you do kind of, but you don't have to grab your face if your face just got punched. You can do that a little. But just selling it from the face, knowing exactly where they hit you. If they punched you, where did they hit you exactly? Selling it from that point. That makes it more believable. That's really what this is all about, Greenhorns, believability. It's not really, it's kayfabe. Kayfabe is dead, but that's not my point. We're not trying to preserve kayfabe here. We're trying to suspend disbelief in the audience. And we do that by being specific in the way we are selling and being real characters in that ring. That's another word I'm throwing out there, real. Look, I might be a Scottish madman from the woods as Grizzly Duncan McBain, but there's a kernel of truth in this. There's a piece of me in that. Because if you go out there and you're not honest, if you're not playing it up truthfully, if you're kind of faking it, if you're half-assing it, the audience can tell. Hashtag Hamish said early on, audiences have great bullshit detectors, and they will notice if you are not being honest to them. Now, I don't mean being yourself in the ring. There's parts of that. You want part of yourself in that ring. But playing the imaginary circumstances realistically. If I'm in there and I'm a Scottish madman, by God, I'm a Scottish madman. I'm not Joe Grasso pretending to be a Scottish madman. When I'm in that ring, I'm a Scottish madman. The same way that when L.A. Star is in there, he's the real star in this business. The same way that when Wildman Robbie Page is in there, he's Wildman Robbie Page. When Cocky Rocky DeCola is in that ring, he is cocky. That is who he is in that ring. He might be a little... Some people are the same in and out of that ring. I think Cocky Rocky's pretty close to being the same in and out of that damn ring. But he's playing it honestly. He's found something that works for him, and he's playing the shit out of it. So find that honesty in the ring. That brings me to another point. Fear. I'm not saying be a wimp. I'm not saying chicken out. Obviously, if you're healing, you need to chicken out, you chicken out. Find the moments of danger. If we go into that ring and, it's all hunky-dory, I'm throwing a whip. If there's no danger there, if there's no threat of, this guy could break my back, or I could get really hurt here, it's not that you don't rise to the challenge. It's that things could go wrong. In my mind, I'm picturing Hulk Hogan when he's going up against Andre. That first moment when they're first meeting. Hogan's terrified. He's showing strength. He's walking towards the giant. But you can see in him that there is this small part of him, maybe possibly even a bigger part of him, that he is scared to death. He's going up against a monster. Now, this could be true of any one of your opponents. There's got to be, when you're locking up with someone, unless you're playing it up that you're not showing fear, you have to go into that with this. So when we do sword fighting, to give you an example, a big problem we have is fear of the blade. People not having this fear of the blade. When you're going through these moves and you feel, the audience can tell there's no danger there. There's a fake sword. It's a fake fight. But if you play it up like, that almost cut my goddamn head off, or that thrust came really close, even if it didn't come close, just that moment of, oh shit, this could get real and I could die, playing that honestly. Just like in the ring, you got to play that honestly. You could get really hurt in there. Your opponent could break you. That could be the end of your career. That's an important thing to have in the ring. On the flip side of that, having that fear, I'll call it fear of the maneuver. Fear of the maneuver. Fear of your opponent. Again, I don't mean being a wimp. I don't mean backing off unless that's your character. I mean, there's a level of respect to what's happening to you, a level of fear. Like, oh no, oh God, why is this happening? On the flip side, intention. Intention is another important word. When you're giving someone a suplex, when you're giving someone a body slam, don't half-ass it. Have that intention. You don't have to make it any stronger than it is, but having that in your body, that it goes through everything. It's a tension in your arms. It's a tension in the way you slam. It's a tension in your face. It's breathing properly. It's showing that you mean this move and you mean it to work. We dealt with a lot of this in the past show, and I'm not throwing anyone under the bus, and this is a note from John Rambo, that people were Irish whipping and they were half-assing it. They weren't showing it. And what he's saying there is that they didn't have intention. When I'm whipping you off those ropes, I need to have the intention of throwing my opponent to those ropes so hard that he bounces back into whatever move I have planned. That's some serious intention. Now, we're not saying you got to throw him any harder than you are, but when you throw him, your body shows it. You're bending your knees, you're sinking down into those hips, you're pulling your arm out, you're slapping his back as he goes. That makes all the difference in the world, and you're not adding any extra strength or tension to the move. Intention. And that branches out into ferocity. A lot of trainees have trouble finding that moment of ferocity because we don't really live in a violent society. We kind of do. We like to glamorize violence, but we ourselves are not violent creatures. So in order to find that violence, we are playing characters, whether we're sword fighting or whether we're professional wrestling, we are playing characters that live in a world of violence. So you need to bring to that ring that ferocity, that intention. I'm going to hurt you, or I'm going to knock you out, or I'm going to beat you just bad enough that you will get pinned. I'm not trying to hurt you, but I will if I have to. I mean, that depends on if you're a face or a heel, or how you plan on winning the match. A swig of Diet Mountain Dew for the working man. And to preserve my voice, I've been shouting at you nonstop for the past 20 minutes. Like I said, stream of consciousness, so, if you don't like it, fuck off. This is how I talk. This is how I teach. I hope you can pick up some kernels out of this. So we've got breath. Starts with breath. Starts with stance. Starts with ferocity. Ends with ferocity. You need intention. You need fear of the maneuver. You need to listen to your opponent. All of these things I've mentioned. Breath, the way you stand, the way you move, the way you have fear of the maneuver, your intention for a maneuver, they all go back to one thing that I haven't mentioned. Listen to your partner. Listen to your opponent. And I don't mean just with your ears. I don't mean listen when they're calling a match, though that's important too. I'm talking about listening with your entire body. When you're circling up, let's say the other person's the vet, and they're going a certain speed. Well, you're supposed to match that speed. That's listening physically. That's paying attention to what they're doing and reacting in an honest way. When they're coming around and you need to move faster to avoid them catching you, you see, that's listening honestly. Because you don't want to be in a situation where they're going to trip you up, where they're going to get you. That's a real simple concept of listening with your body. But that means, look, if someone's coming at me, and we're about evenly matched, evenly sized, and they're, they lock up and they're super strong about it, and I come in weak as hell, well, that looks fucking terrible. I'm not listening to my partner. I'm not listening to how they're working this. I'm not listening to their body. I come from a school of acting that really focuses on, if anyone's interested, it's Stanislavski, it's Meisner, which is all about listening. It's all about taking in the information you're getting from your scene partner, processing it, and giving it back. Now, I'm not saying this process takes a while, but I'm listening to them, and I'm listening in the moment, being in the moment with your opponent. When I'm wrestling someone, I'm not thinking about what I'm going to eat for dinner later. I'm thinking about what's going on in that match. I think about, and I said this on an earlier episode, Rowdy Roddy Piper used to say, when he got in a ring, he will look at his opponent's boots. He will think like a fighter. He will look at their boots. He'll see where the scuff marks are. Because if there's scuff marks in the back, well, that means he's going to retreat a little more. So I got to watch that. Or if they're in the front, that means, he's going to come at me harder. I got to be prepared for that. And look, he's limping in his leg a little. Maybe I'll go for that. That's a weakness I can handle. I can exploit. Listening to your opponent and giving them back. There's an exercise in the Meisner method where You just say the same. I look at you, we're sitting across from each other in a chair, and say, you're wearing a shirt. I say green shirt. I don't put any emphasis on that. I just say green shirt. Without thinking, they respond back, what about my green shirt? Which is a poor response. You're not supposed to ask a question, but I'll keep it going for this exercise because we're not really doing the exercise. They say green shirt. I say, what about my green shirt? Green shirt. What about my green shirt? Green shirt. What about my green shirt? Green shirt. Using just those two responses, you are listening to what your partner is giving you, and you are giving it back. When you do a scene, even if it's the exact same scene. Now, this is important in theater when you're doing the same show over and over again. It is never the same show twice. Never. Never should it be. I'm not saying you shouldn't follow your blocking. And in a match, I'm not saying you shouldn't follow the flow of the match. But if I give a body slam, it's going to have a different flavor every time I do it. It's not going to be the exact same flavor. It's not going to have the exact same reaction. That's reacting to it normally. Like, if someone body slams me and it was kind of weak, there's no reason I should sell that at a 10. That'll make me look weak. I got to sell that at whatever number it came at. Maybe it was a 2, maybe a level 2 body slam. But if they give me a 10, by God, I better sell that like a 10 and not sell it like a 2. I'm listening to what my partner is giving me. They give me a big super chop, I sell the shit out of it. I'll bounce around the fucking ring. They give me a little weak-ass chop, I'm not going to sell it big. Fuck, I might even turn them around and give them some chops. Listening, playing the scene. Now, professional wrestling is hugely improv-based. Sure, you could work out your match, but there's always going to come time when you either forget or things need to change. You're listening to your audience. You need to change things up. There's a concept in improv called yes and. For example, when someone comes at you with something in the improv, if they say, oh, you have a lovely store here, you're not supposed to say, oh, I don't have a store. That's killing the moment. That's saying no. Yes and. You have a lovely store. Well, thank you. I've just painted it this morning. I've taken what they've given me, I've turned it, and I've added to it. When someone gives me a chop, I'm not stone-facing that. I'm not selling it as if it never happened. I'm taking that information they've given me. Let's say they give me a level 10 chop. This is Blackhawk. He's giving me a big-ass chop. I'm then going to add to that by selling it and giving him more to work off of. When I sell that and drop down to my ass, that gives him something to work with. Say I sell it and I try to move away. He shoves me back. We're doing a scene now. We're playing a scene together. Yes, and. It is an important concept to use in professional wrestling. Whew. Wow, I've been talking for a while now. Now, to hell with Big Bear's Den and sponsors this week, because this is the Grizzly Files. I do things my way. So you're just going to have to take a back seat this week. Ryan Milliner, Big Daddy Rai, Big Bear Roy Gillette, we love you. And you've been doing some good segments. But this week it's all about acting. And we're already at 29 minutes, so I've been talking for some time. I hope, Greenhorns, you've gotten something out of this. I hope you've gotten a couple little kernels of truth and of understanding of acting and performing in the ring. Because I know if you haven't trained in theater or acting or done any kind of acting, it's daunting to go into a wrestling ring. You might have the physical prowess to do it, but maybe you don't have the panache, the charisma, the acting ability to do some of this stuff. But don't worry, man. Look, these are things that can be developed. Same way your body can be developed, you can develop these skills. Just depends on what you train in. Just keep trying. Just keep playing. That's another thing. Play in the ring. Have fun. The reason they call it a play in theater is because it's supposed to be fun. You're supposed to have a good time. So when you get in that ring, think of it like a play. Have a good time. Be serious. Take it seriously. Play up your action. Have your ferocity. Breathe. But have a good time. If you're not having a good time, don't be in this business. It's the same with theater. If you're not enjoying the shit out of it, don't do it. There's about a million other things you could be doing with your time. Have fun. Listen to your partner and breathe. And on that note, I'm almost in downtown Hagerstown, Maryland, at the Superior Professional Wrestling Training Center, House of Pain. And I'm going to tap out, Greenhorns. So be honest with yourself. Be true to your opponent. Remember, rate, review, subscribe to us on iTunes. You can find us on Facebook. You can write to us at roadtowrestlingschool@gmail.com. Send us questions, comments. So keep the faith, brothers. I'll see you down the road and in the ring.
That ending sounds good. I like that.